What's up, guys? I'm Steve. I'm back again here with my Week 11 takeaways. So let's just get right into it. Danny Dimes, Danny Dimes. Um, what a warrior this man is, truly. Before the season, everybody, including myself, we all wrote this man off. It's crazy what a great coaching staff can do for a player. I feel like that guy has been through the carousel of coaches and offensive coordinators and whatever else. Um, He's currently the QB 14 on the year on a points per game basis. He's finished as a top 10 scoring quarterback 2 times this year. Now we can add a third to that with Week 11's effort. Unfortunately, a losing effort, which was no fault of his own. He had 341 pass yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions while rushing for another 50 yards on 7 carries and the 1 rushing score. So the guy almost had, almost 400 total yards of offense. The Lions made it very difficult for Saquon Barkley to get anything going on the ground, naturally making, Danny Dimes throw a little more. But I feel this is probably the best ball he's ever played by a mile behind a very poor offensive line. My bold prediction, they declined his 5th-year option, but my bold prediction, they re-sign him to a contract extension. He's a lot better than what he's been made out as. Going over to another quarterback, the Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson. So I don't know if we're confused or what it is with the Baltimore offense right now. The Baltimore Ravens pretty well made the Carolina Panthers make them look like the 1985 Chicago Bears. Lamar Jackson, he only had 209 passing yards with no TD, the 1 interception. He saved his fantasy day with the 31 rush yards and the rushing score. He's only had multiple throwing TDs only once this year. The injury to Rashad Bateman, I feel, has really made it difficult for the Ravens to get anything going downfield. So naturally, the safeties play closer. So they're manning up on Mark Andrews more and just taking away that aspect of their game. Mark Andrews finally returned to the lineup this week, but he did little against this 19th ranked Carolina defense. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, they were able to gut out the victory, but I feel fantasy managers here, like myself, we're sitting here waiting for more out of Lamar Jackson and this Baltimore offense. If we can make it to the playoffs with them, he plays Cleveland, Atlanta, and Pittsburgh. If you make it, I feel like he will bring that title home for you. We just got to make it there. That's all. Going over to some running backs now. Detroit Lions. We're going to go over Jamal Williams. I mean, all this man does is score touchdowns and watch anime. He's been very efficient in his backup role. He scored the 3 rushing touchdowns against the Giants, bringing his league leading total up to 12 on the year. The downside to him is that he's only averaging 4.2 yards a carry, 3.6 over his last 3 games, which is pretty poor. He's not really a factor in the passing game. He's kind of like a TD or bust kind of player right now. That's mostly how he's been throughout the year. But I mean, all he does is score TDs and watch anime. And until we see DeAndre Swift's role increase in this offense, we have no reason not to start Jamal Williams every week. So keep firing him up as a mid to low end RB2 and just ride it out until there's no juice left. Now we'll go to the Atlanta Falcons. Cordero Patterson. His last 2 games after his Week 9 return from his injury, Cordero Patterson, he's only had 15 carries for 70 rushing yards, no rushing TDs. He only has 3 targets for 3 catches and 9 yards. He did have a fumble as well against Chicago, and that's all since returning from his injury in Week 9. Out of a potential 179 snaps Cordero Patterson could have played, he's played only 75 of those 179 snaps for a total snap share of 42%. That's been his average over the last 3 games. We have Tyler Algier playing more snaps the last 2 weeks than him. The Week 9 return. Yep. We saw Tyler Algier with 99 total rushing yards on 9 rushing attempts in Week 9, almost 10 yards a carry. Cordero Patterson doesn't have that typical wide receiver and running back usage up to this point in his career, but he still is a 31-year-old receiver slash running back. And I feel like, we might be seeing something similar to what Atlanta did with him last year near the end of the season, lowering all his usage. And I really feel like that's what we're seeing because, that he doesn't really have a whole lot over the last 3 weeks. I will say this though for the man. Congratulations. He did get that kick return to now become the all-time leading kick returner, passing Josh Cribbs for the most kick return TDs all time. That is very exciting, and that certainly salvaged his fantasy day from a fantasy perspective. But again, I think that usage is pretty worrying going forward because this is the exact same way the Atlanta Falcons did it last year with him as well. So let's go to the Cleveland Browns. Amari Cooper. Finally, hey, the man was able to produce on the road. So I'll just say it. All the scrutiny that the man got for these home and away splits, maybe, just maybe, it was the matchups. I feel like if the Week 11 game stayed in Buffalo away, and Amari Cooper naturally did bad because of the blizzard, I feel like people would still be like, wow, he's still doing bad on the road and we don't get what's going on. But now, where they go to Detroit, and what does this man do? What did this man do? All he did was come out here and do catch 8 catches on 12 targets for 113 receiving yards and 2 receiving TDs, silencing all those questions on whether or not he could produce on the road. So with saying that, he's averaging over 7 targets a game with no Deshaun Watson, having 50 catches on 81 targets for 698 total receiving yards on the year, 7 receiving touchdowns. Again, this is all with no Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson is returning soon. Deshaun Watson, playing in a full season, has finished no worse than the QB4. The Browns' playoff matchups are the Baltimore Ravens, the New Orleans Saints, and the Washington Commanders. For those skeptical about those road splits, the Browns play the Ravens and the Saints at home. Then Washington is away. So 2 of those 3 games are at home. I would feel very safe with Amari Cooper, and I'd be very excited to see this dominant stat line on the road. One more receiver we're going to go over here, Josh Palmer of the Los Angeles Chargers. With Mike Williams, re-aggravating that high ankle sprain. He probably should have never played. Him re-aggravating that high ankle sprain early in the game. The target floodgates certainly opened up for Josh Palmer there, even with the return of Keenan Allen. Josh Palmer's last 4 games, not including Week 7 when he didn't play, he has a combined 40 targets over that stretch. He's averaging 58 snaps per game, and he finally exploding this week for 8 catches, 106 receiving yards, 2 total receiving touchdowns. This Chargers offense is starving for playmakers not named Austin Eckler, and maybe to some extent Keenan Allen now that he's back. Naturally, with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams back, I think we were a little hesitant to maybe start Josh Palmer. But like I mentioned earlier, with Mike Williams going down early, I think the best thing for Josh Palmer is potentially having Keenan Allen there to take away that primary coverage. Because look what Josh Palmer did with Keenan Allen there, So if the offense could keep rolling and keep putting up points on the board, the Chargers' skill players very well may win your leagues if they keep the ball rolling. That's a big if, a very big if. So we're gonna go over. I think I have 2 tight ends here, one for sure. We're gonna go over to the Las Vegas Raiders, Foster Moreau. With how bad the tight end landscape is, I'd understand why you'd want to keep this man. But my only argument to that is, unless your name is Devontae Adams or Josh Jacobs, you simply are not going to produce enough fantasy-wise to be viable to start if you play for the Las Vegas Raiders. He gets the usage. The only thing going for him is that over the last 2 weeks, he's played 67 snaps and he's played 66 snaps. So he's definitely on the field a lot. He's out there, which gives him that potential to get targets, to produce fantasy points. This week was obviously a little rough. He had the donut going into the overtime period. finally got one catch for, I think it was 32 yards, 33 yards, 3 targets, which, again, 0 catches going into overtime. He's had 5 or less targets in the last 3 games, even with no Darren Waller. He just isn't producing enough for me to feel confident in starting him. I don't know how anybody could feel confident starting him. I understand keeping him just based on the snap counts. He's out there. But if you dropped him, I can understand too. I'm sure there's better options out there. There was 2 tight ends. So we're going to go over the New Orleans Saints tight end, Juwan Johnson. All I hear from any fantasy analyst or whoever it might be is that Juwan Johnson is this boom or bust guy who needs to produce and get a touchdown, yada, 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 to produce. Well, until he does bust, business is certainly booming, not to quote Antonio Brown there. Antonio Brown, remember those days? What a damn shame. So, over his last 6 games, he has at least 40 receiving yards in 4 of those games, Juwan Johnson, to go along with 5 receiving touchdowns. Anyone who scooped him up off the waiver wire is certainly reaping the rewards of him with how bad the tight end landscape is. He's averaging almost 5 targets a game over that stretch. He's been very consistent in the red zone, catching 4 of his 5 touchdowns in the red zone. I'm not going to say he's a must-start every week just based on matchups. But the schedule does get a little tougher down the road, but, you could certainly do worse than Juwan Johnson. But I think that's all I got for takeaways this week. I appreciate everybody watching, and yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.